Hello YouTube, I finished the Sd.Kfz 265 model from Dragon in 1/35 scale. This is an early model small command tank and a variant of the Panzer I with only a single machine gun attached to the front. So its main purpose was not to fight but to provide the tank commander with mobility and communications on the battlefield. The kit has nice details and, as typical with Dragon, a bunch of extra sprue knobs that must be cut off each part. I bought this kit used and it came with a set of photo etch that wasn't an exact match, but 99% of the pieces are the same. The notorious German tool clamps were a colossal pain to assemble, but luckily there was a bunch of spares on the photo etch parts. The airbrush I'm using is a Badger Sotar 2020 with a 0.2mm nozzle. The air pressure is between 15 and 20 psi. And for this pre-shading, I'm not worried about making a super fine, clean line because it's going to get covered with the top coat of paint anyways. A lighter shade of blue is mixed with the base coat to be used as a highlight. No precise measurement here, just a little bit of guesswork. The wooden box and tool handles get an underlying coat of desert yellow, and I will brush brown oil paint across it later in the build. Starting on the figures, I drill out the sleeves in each arm so they're not completely molded solid. Extra thin cement will melt the plastic and smooth out some of the drill and knife marks that we don't want to show up. Here's a before and after of what the sleeves look like. When it comes to painting the faces, I'll use 3 different shades of flesh tones, starting with the darkest and painting the shadows below the jawline and the eye sockets, and then blending up to the lightest shade on the cheekbones and bridge of the nose. My palette is a piece of tape, and I'll mix various skin shades on it before applying it to the face. So I try to keep the coats very light and thin, so I'm not applying an excessive amount of paint. The eyes were overpainted white on purpose so that I can then come back later with my flesh tones and narrow the area down to just the eyeballs. It took a couple of weeks to finish these figures, and most of the time was spent waiting on the oil paint to completely dry. When it was dry, I brushed a 5 o'clock shadow using black paint onto one of the figures. Enamel Thinner won't fully seal the pigments onto the model like a Pigment Fixer would, so I'll still be able to brush them around and remove some of the excess and do a little extra blending once it's dry. I've built individual track links before, but these were a nightmare. Each link had 5 connection points, which must be cut from the sprue, and many of them broke in the process, no matter what order I cut them off. So finally, I realized I needed to stop throwing out the broken pieces and start gluing them back together because I was breaking too many. I'd guess that 30% were broken and had to be glued back together. I'll straighten the links and then bend them to shape before the glue is fully dry. They're very fragile and easily come apart during this step, but once they're situated, I'll add some spacers and let them finish drying. As I attach the tracks, you'll see that some of them broke apart in various places. It's inconvenient, but also not hard to glue them back together. I've already coated the model with the gloss clear, which in this case was Pledge Revive It, before I applied the panel liner and the oil washes. If you haven't ever bought a resin upgrade set, you should, because they're awesome and very detailed. And the resin sets typically come with the foam protection pieces, which I'm using a piece of right now to dab on the paint for the rusty exhaust shroud. It only takes a tiny bit of oil paint to make a streak, and this is way too much. And also my line is crooked, so when this happens, it's easy to wipe the excess off with the cotton swab and start over. I've made a thin mix of oil paint and mineral spirits, and I'm just brushing it around on the tank, making streaks and adding some color variation. I've used 3 colors for this, basically a light shade, a medium shade, and then a dark shade, which is buff, burnt umber, and black. Adding white onto some of the edges like this can give a nice worn appearance, as well as act like a highlight. I've also used it on some of the hatches and the hinges and other edges of the model. The headlights were painted chrome silver, and then a drop of clear varnish was added on top of them for a glassy effect. The figures in the kit did not come with any decals for their uniform markings, so I used some leftover ones from a Tamiya Wehrmacht set that I already had. They were so small they barely stuck to the figure, so I would immediately cover them with Microsol to get them a good fit and adhere them to the figure. It's hard to make shadows on the clothing when it's already pitch black, so instead I mixed a dark gray color and brushed it onto the clothing ridges for added highlights. All this was done on the gloss coat, and once dry I sprayed Mr. Hobby 182 flat clear onto it, and then added some pigments on the boots and the knees of the figures. The binoculars were a poor fit in the commander's hand, so I heated the hand with a candle so I could mold it and tighten his grip. I did it slowly and multiple times so as not to melt the hand or set the whole figure on fire. I lost some definition in his fingers doing so, so that's where I sliced them back in with the hobby knife.